This is Internet Marketing. Brought to you by SiteVisibility at sitevisibility.co.uk. This is Internet Marketing. Now, before we start today, a bit of shameless self-promotion because SiteVisibility has recently published the Ultimate Content Promotion Guide. It's their most comprehensive guide to date, and in it they break down all the content marketing promotion tactics, tricks and tools you'll ever need to help you achieve content marketing success. You can download the guide plus a handy printable content promotion checklist for free by going to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/ultimate-content. And that's all lowercase because bit.ly is case sensitive. Ultimate-content. Today I'm joined by Andrew Sumitani, Senior Director of Marketing at TINYpulse. Andrew, how are you?
Not too bad, Andy. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. And you're over in, if I'm not mistaken, Seattle.
Yes, we are. The Great Northwest.
The Great Northwest. Is it cold or warm there right now? I always get confused with the seasons over there.
Yeah, springtime. We've had, temperatures up to 85 degrees as of late, so I'm not really sure what's going on. It's very unusual for Seattle, hitting some record highs, but normally it's pretty rainy at this time, and we're starting to see a little bit of that again.
Tell us about yourself and TINYpulse.
Absolutely. So I'm the Senior Director of Marketing at TINYpulse, and at TINYpulse, we're all about people as a company's most competitive advantage. And what I think that means for the people and the customers that we work with is if you lead a team or a company or perhaps a human resources professional who wants to take control of your culture, we're going to help you do that. So we help managers and companies to create happy, high-performing teams.
And I'm also joined by Jason Woodford of SiteVisibility. Hello, Jason.
Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Just remind our viewers who you are and what you do at SiteVisibility.
Sure. No, I'm Jason Woodford. I'm CEO here at SiteVisibility. But this podcast isn't about us. It's about TINYpulse. And SiteVisibility is a customer and an avid user and big fan of TINYpulse.
Andrew, why is it that company culture is so important, and why should marketers care about that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think culture as a concept has gone through an interesting change. And I think people in the digital space especially, so if you're interested in digital marketing, if you're interested in e-commerce and you run an organization, or even if you're just part of an organization doing marketing, people like you have figured out a way to make it the key to winning in any business. So good culture used to mean having free snacks and a pool table. And that's because that was unusual. It was different. It was a new way to think about work. And it attracted people who thought differently and got them to work at that place. And I think we can all agree that we want to hire the right people. And that's why marketers and HR professionals and leaders and CEOs really need to pay attention and literally learn how to use culture as a tool and as an advantage. I think marketing in particular has a lot of power because the same principles and tactics that help you attract and close customers, close your business, are the principles and tactics that are going to help you attract and recruit the best talent, or at least the right people for where your company is right now. So, and I think to dive into that further, you do that by communicating with the right talent, and the same goes for customers, using the right media with a message that differentiates you as a company, as a team, as an organization. And so I think today we make fun of the pool table and free snacks, but when you think about what that really represented in the past, it differentiated how a group of people thinks, the principles that they value. And I think that it becomes actually a very powerful concept. How do we do things around here? Why do we do them that way? That's actually really valuable to know and is what makes people work together if they align or not. And they may agree to disagree, and that becomes, they may save themselves some headache.
Now, I want to bring Jason in because Jason has been using your product, but I'll direct this question at you, I think, Andrew, mainly. Jason, you can just chip in whenever you want. I mean, marketing agencies and companies that are big on marketing, they do tend to nail employee engagement. Why is that?
Yeah, so a while ago, I heard the true master, Scott Dorsey. Scott sold ExactTarget to Salesforce and now runs a venture studio in Indianapolis called High Alpha. Shout out, Scott, if you're listening. And what Scott talked about rings in my mind still. So this is a couple years ago, big conference. He wanted us to get away from thinking about leads and pipelines and metrics, things that marketers think about all day and how those things drive the business. He said, think about your role, marketing in this case, in the broadest context possible. So he wanted us to think about more exalted things that drive the business as well. It's harder, but it's more fun than going into the Excel mines all day, as one of my teammates puts it. Things like, how do we take responsibility for the employee experience and make it so good that people just want to share it? I think that's where marketers come in with their skill set. They have the skills to own things like a company's Glassdoor score, their LinkedIn page, maybe their jobs page and their About Us page. People think about Us pages, and even though it might not be the most highly trafficked page on a company's website, it's probably one of the most important ones still, because the people who are going to show up on your About page, those are your partners, your investors, your potential hires, your potential new CFO or a chief operating officer coming down the road. So all the things that make great employees, all the things that great employees are going to look up before they consider interviewing or doing business with you.
Now, Jason, what's your perspective? Because you've been using these principles and indeed the products, haven't you, for a while? How are you finding it?
Yeah, thanks, Andy, and good to speak to you, Andrew. We're big fans of TINYpulse at SiteVisibility, and it's interesting to be thinking about all of this through a marketing lens, because in terms of staff and in terms of customers, the first place to look at are your existing customers, and hence your existing staff. And we found that within the team, one of our problems was that we weren't listening to our staff, and we were being told that. And people didn't feel that they were getting recognized for good work, for suggestions, for making progress. And although the management team thought that these were being addressed, there was no sort of audit trail for showing where it had been listened to and where it had moved on. So someone introduced me to TINYpulse, and we experimented with it, and now it's just been rolled out back in 2018 across the whole business. And our experience has been fantastic in that we actually added up how many cheers were sent through TINYpulse in the year, and we had 710 cheers sent through TINYpulse, and each of those is like a small recognition for a job well done. And the person who wins the most cheers in a month gets an extra mile award, which might be enough to buy themselves a few snacks, but it's gone a long way to helping people feel at least that their successes are being recognised. And then equally on the suggestion side, people are making suggestions, and there's a fantastic audit trail on if suggestions are being actioned, what's happened about them, and other people can become aware of what's happening. And that just really helps people within the team to understand, where progress is being made, but also holds the management team to account for stuff that's not being addressed or dealt with. So things tend to move on much more quickly. So for us, it's really about staff engagement, team engagement, and ultimately team retention. And that's really worked for us. We've been really, really pleased, and it's very much part of our company culture right now.
Oh, that's really fantastic, Jason. I think well, first of all, I'm going to have to nick that idea for the extra mile award. We'll try that one out as well when it comes to tallying up all the cheers. I think that is the exact right use case for a tool like TINYpulse. Sure, someone could do all of this on a piece of paper, and I think that's the important thing. People simply want to feel valued at work. It's more than compensation. It's more than benefits. It's simply feeling recognized. And whether that is recognized for a job well done, going the extra mile, helping someone out, accomplishing a really awesome career milestone. The other is being recognized in the form of being heard. We just had Howard Behar, former president of Starbucks, come by and hang out with us in Seattle at TinyCon last year. And he was telling us about the Frappuccino, a $4 billion product that was not the result of some product manager at Starbucks. It was the idea of a frontline barista who said, okay, well, it's hot out. Why are we giving people hot coffee? We got to give them something else that's going to help cool them down. It's going to be refreshing. And, that gave rise to the Frappuccino. And it's not just good enough to come up with that idea. Someone has to act on it. And so the key was Starbucks had to be listening and ready to take action on those ideas in a spot where they may not have ever taken action in the first place and missed out on what was a really great product and a great product to this day.
What's really interesting, actually, was because Jason was mentioning how that this tool increases communication, and it's that sort of intersection between communication and it really does seem to boost employee engagement, doesn't it? I mean, how did that evolve, Andrew, as you were sort of designing this system?
So I think this comes back to the pool table example and why that represented something very simple but also very profound, which is the principles that a group of people value. How do we think about things around here, and why do we do them that way? The more talented people you have who value your principles, the better those people are going to work together. They're going to enjoy their work more. They're going to feel a bigger stake in what they do. And when that happens, you get a really awesome award-winning company. There's a really great talk given by Mike Volpe, creator of Inbound Marketing and former CMO at HubSpot. He's now the CEO of Lola Travel. Shout out, Mike, if you're listening. Go Google Mike and how he thinks about people, operations, and culture, which culture he feels is a product just like anything else, and you've got to market that product. You've got to nurture that product. You got to have people supporting that product, and you've got to have people selling that product too. So by selling culture to really great talented people, they're going to want to come work for you and do great things at that company. Now, when it comes to communications, again, that's where marketers are and marketing as a profession come into play. Marketers are professional communicators. Their job isn't just to say things, but also to manage how well what they say is understood by the company. There's a great book by Ben Horowitz of Andreessen and Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's not enough to know what to do as a leader. You have to get the organization to do what you know, and that means being understood. So in any organization beyond, say, 5 to 10 people, being understood is going to get harder the bigger you get. And that's a good and an interesting problem to have. So how do we create tools that keep customer experiences, employee experiences, just about anything you experience? How do we keep those very conversational? And that's where learning to manage things like a company's culture and performance in an organized, conversational way are going to be the hallmarks of excellence.
You alluded to something that I was going to ask about, actually, because my next question was going to be, if you had a top tip or a takeaway for the audience today, what would it be? And you mentioned about marketers and the power to determine the company's culture as you go forward. What other sort of thoughts do you think our listeners should have as they leave this podcast?
Well, marketers have the power to determine whether the company's culture is a force for good by attracting and retaining great people. So simply apply those tactics to how you market yourself as an employer. Marketers, you know how to communicate and differentiate. You know how to measure and improve your results. You know how to turn feedback into the right action. Those are the exact same things you need to do with your employees. Take those skills to your next client or your own CEO or your HR department, and they're going to be very, very surprised that you know how to turn the business around when it comes to culture. I think a lot of people issues can be solved when you think about your people as customers in that way, and there's a lot of power in that skill set. It's not just about generating business.
So, Jason, just going back to you, what are some of the things that you have learned, or has this system helped you to discover about your own business?
Apart from the hundreds of suggestions that have come through, two real key things came out. Was that as people got used to using the technology to provide feedback, we learned that some things are still best dealt with directly and face-to-face. So we've changed some of our processes to enable that. But one of the big surprises, and personally one of the biggest successes, was that the anonymity of the TINYpulse platform allows people to make suggestions that they may not feel comfortable doing face-to-face or to the line manager. And the result of that, and people's comfort in doing that, has resulted in just the most significant volume of really great ideas that have come through, suggestions on things that weren't working, that we weren't aware of, that we're able now to deal with, and a lot more progress. So those are probably the two most important things that we've learned.
And Jason, when it comes to progress, after you've received an idea or a great suggestion, what are some of the ways that you've taken action on those suggestions? Do you immediately have to respond to each one? What are some of the ways that you've acted on that feedback?
Well, we've got a process where a couple of us meet once a month and we go through all the suggestions, which are really neatly tabulated on a table in front of us in the main meeting room. And we go through each of those suggestions and task manage. So we allocate people to collaborate with us on solving that problem together. And that's a feature that really works well. Sort of shares the problem and puts the people who can solve the problem in the driving seat to solving it. The second thing is we share the wins. So when stuff gets done, it's marked up as a win, and that's shared on the wins board. And we also, go through that during the monthly team meetings, and people comment on that. That sort of recognition that stuff has been done and that's a success and that was dealt with is good for the team because they're pleased that people are listening. But it's also good for the management team who responsible for making sure that happens, that they can show that was listened to and dealt with.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a wonderful example of, I think, the feedback loop, and again, feeling recognized through TINYpulse is being able to share that feedback anonymously and be very transparent, but then two is know that something's being done about it. A lot of the folks that we work with through TINYpulse, they correctly take action on feedback, but one of the stumbling blocks they run into is once they've taken action, employees are still disengaged, they're still unhappy because they simply don't know that management's done something about it. So that's where features like the wins board and being able to post wins that get broadcasted to the entire company and tell them, hey, we heard you and here's what we did about here's what we've done about that. It really I think sparks even more great feedback. People realize, when I come up with a great idea and I come up with a plan for how we're going to take action, boy, this place takes action. This is a great place to work.
Well, Andrew and Jason, thank you both for coming on today. Thank you so much. Andrew, how can our listeners find out more about you and TINYpulse?
You can see how we do a lot of the things that we've talked about on today's episode at tinypulse.com. We have one of the biggest blogs for culture and leadership out there. Come join us at TinyCon in Seattle this September. That's a great time of year. I guarantee you probably won't be raining. We've had a couple of cloudy days, but it's beautiful in Seattle at that time. We've had folks like Mike and Scott hang out with us, Dan Price, Howard Behar, former president of Starbucks, with us. You can connect with me on Twitter at Andrew Sumitani. And culture is about people, and people can sometimes be difficult, but when you take control and responsibility for that, the power you're going to feel is unbelievable. So I hope you all enjoyed today's episode.
Well, thanks, Andrew. And thanks for listening, everybody. The show notes will be in the usual place, which is sitevisibility.co.uk/IM podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review so that we know how we're doing. We're open to suggestions and questions. The email is podcast@sitevisibility.co.uk. You can tweet at SiteVisibility. Remember, we have a Site Visibility group on LinkedIn. That's all from me, Andy. And it's all from Andrew.
Thanks very much.
And it's all from Jason.
See you next time, Andy.
Thanks, guys. And we'll see you next time on Internet Marketing.